Alright, in this video I'm going to show you how to do the easel file for the lamp head for the skills task. We're going to start with Easel. I've opened it up. I've created a new project which is called Untitled. I can click here and I can call it lamp head, and I'll give it a name so that when you come back to it you know what it is you're dealing with. What we see here is three areas to the screen. You have your editing area down here. You have your workspaces over here. We have only one workspace valid at the moment, and we'll do more later. And what we have is we have an overview of what or preview of what the actual piece of wood is going to be looking like. And we're going to start over here because up there it says birch plywood. We're not using birch plywood. We're going to use pine. Now I've used pine before, but you haven't, so scroll down until you get to pine and select that. The size doesn't really matter. You've got 308 and 203. The piece you're going to have is about 140 by 140, so it doesn't matter, it can be bigger than that. If it's bigger, it'll give you more workspace over here to play with, so it's quite nice having that. But what is important is we need this thickness to be 19 millimeters. So type 19, press enter, and away we go. Before we move off this area, we will see that the bit is 1/8 inch straight cutter, and we're going to leave it at that. You don't need to change anything there. The cut settings we're going to come across, it has automatic and manual. I'm going to ask you to switch to manual. The feed rate we're going to slow down to 600. The plunge rate we're going to put at 200. The depth per pass we're going to set at 2. And the spindle speed, depending how you set up your machine, but it should be 10,000 here. The fill method can remain unchanged, and the plunge method we're going to go with vertical. It's a little bit kinder in some respects to plunge at an angle depending on your cutter, a little bit kinder to your cutter. However, there is at least one cut where an angled plunge is not going to be that easy for us, so we're just going to use vertical in all cases. And that'll set up the material and the machine as we go along. So now what we do is we start editing, and we're going to do it in two parts. The head has a pocket into which the circuit board goes, and then it has an outline, and we're going to do those two parts separately. We're actually going to use two separate workspaces, and I'll explain the reasons why and the settings changes that we make as we go on to the second workspace. So firstly, for the pocket, what we're going to be doing, it is circular. So we come over to the editing window here, and we hit circle shapes, and we have to click on there, and it puts a circle in. Now I'm going to do that again, and it's not apparent that it's there, but if I drag across, you can see that there are in fact two circles. I'm going to do that again, and I'm going to drag it across and see there's three circles. I'm going to do it one more time and drag it across and see that there are four circles. Now let me just use that to enlarge, and let me just scroll in with my mouse, and you can see these four circles, and they're all cutting out, and it's cutting out what's called a pocket. So it's not only doing the outline, it's also taking away all the material inside it. These are all setting in particular places. Actually, I'm going to use the central dot as my positioning, so there's the position for each one of them. You can see that change as I select from circle to circle. And the size at the moment, they're all the same size. It's a circle, rotation is not relevant. This little tab here for cut is quite interesting though. The first thing we have is depth. Now if I have this one here and I pull this down, you can see it gets darker, and you can see that this gets deeper, but you can see that this here, the circle shape, is preserved, and that's because when this was placed on the workspace, these are layered one on top of each other, and this is the one that's at the back, and this is the one that's at the front, so this one takes priority. It means we get to see it as well when we're doing the editing. If I was to come back to this one here, and I was to change the cut depth, and I was actually to make it shallower, alright, you can see that as I make it shallower, it gets lighter on the screen here, and what happens is this is still taking its priority because this is the one that's higher, so it cut out there as well. So that's because even though this is now shallower here, it's not about depth, it's about the way things are layered on your drawing surface. So I'm just going to shift this, if I can. If I want to move the surface around, I use these sliders over here. So that's a bit of a brief look at the actual circles. Now to start the drawing, the four circles I have are four concentric circles. We want to be able to see them on the space, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the largest. So the shape here, we're going to set the size of this one to 72 millimeters in width and 72 high, which makes it a proper circle. We're going to set this one here to 60 and 60. We're going to set this one here to 10 and 10. And we're going to set this one here to 6 and 6. So they're all circles. The next thing we need to do is go back through them all, and we need to set the depths and the information. Now they're all actually set to pocket by default, and that is actually what we want, so we're going to leave that alone. But this one here needs to be 10 millimeters. I can drag it, but it's more accurate to type 10. This one here we're going to have deeper. This one is going to be 16 millimeters. This one here is going to be 10, the same as the larger circle. And this one here is going to be all the way through. So here it's just as easy to drag down. It goes to the full 19 and it's perfectly accurate for that. Now it's a pocket here, so everything's fine. That's going to cut through. But this isn't the way we want it to look. We want them all to overlap. So the easiest way to do that is to select. Now I'd set my sizes and my pocket depth first because it's easier to grab them and snap onto them. Now what I want to do is get them all aligned. So I'm going to center align vertically, and for good measure center align horizontally in case it hasn't changed. And now what I need to do is position it on the material. At the moment, this is saying that I'm going to put the material in the bottom left corner of the machine, and I'm going to cut a hole here. So I need to position the material as I want and have a big enough piece of material. The alternative is we can actually put the material down where we like it. We can move the machine to a starting point, and we can call that the origin. We reset the coordinates of the machine at that point. And so the best place to start on this little pattern that we have here is in the center, and the best way to get that coordinate onto there is actually to move this over here. So we're going to come to the shape here, and we're going to set its position to 0 and 0. So relative to the machine's 0 and 0 work coordinates for X and Y, this is where it's placed. And it looks as though it's over the edge of the piece of wood, and that's not a problem really. It's just the appearance that it is. Easel doesn't have a nice way of saying my piece of wood is here, but actually what I've done is moved my work coordinates. What you have to do is tell it it's here, and it stops presenting it properly. So it's the last step that we're going to be doing here. So that's this cut done. We've defined that, we've drawn it, we've set our depths correctly, everything's as we need to do it. We already had our cut settings prepared, no more to do here. We would be able to hook up to the machine, position the wood, hook up to the machine, start it and run the job, and it should be just fine. But that's just the pocket. So now we need to do the outside of the actual head, and we could still do it around here as well, but I actually want to do it on a separate workspace. So I'm going to click plus, create a separate workspace. The reason I want to do it on a separate workspace is to do with the materials. We're still going to be using the same piece of material. We're still going to be using the same bit. We're actually not going to change the calibration of the machine at all. But when we do the cut, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it at a slower feed rate. I want to make that 300. And the reason why is I expect to get a smoother cut around the outside by running slower. It's going to take longer to do, but I do find at 600 I'm hogging out material fairly quickly. It's a bit rough, and so I get some rough surfaces, especially on the end grain, and I find that I can do a little bit better by slowing it down and taking more care. So I've got two different pieces of material defined, or two different settings defined. One is at 600 millimeters per minute, the other one is at 300 millimeters per minute, and that's why I've got these two separate work surfaces. There is another advantage of doing this, is I'm going to create an outline to cut the head, but I can actually create several of these, and so I can have different shapes possible. So for example, this is circular. I can decide that I'd like it to be circular, so I'm going to click a circle there, place it down. It has to be on the outside. The dimension I'm recommending to you is 95 millimeters, but we don't want a pocket. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be coming to the cut. We're going to want to cut outside the line here, which cuts a ring, and the diameter inside this line is 95 millimeters. The material left behind is 95 millimeters in diameter. That's what we want. We want to cut this all the way through, so we're going to drag it down. And what happens is we immediately see that we have these little yellow tabs. And that's because if you just cut all the way through, it's going to come loose and it's going to be knocked about and cut by the cutter. So to hold it into place, we leave these little tabs in place. They're only about 2 millimeters thick. You can specify it. You can specify the number, and that holds it in place. When the cut's finished, we go and cut those tabs out afterwards and sand them out and get rid of them. In fact, we're going to put it on the router and bevel all the edges, shampoo all the edges, so those tabs will disappear anyway. So we need to have those tabs. We now have a circle that will be around there. In order for it to be on the outside, we need to come back to here and we need to position it as we had the other one positioned. If we don't change the calibration, it'll be centered to the pocket that we've cut if we position it in the same way on 0 and 0 and 0. All right, so there we go. Now we've got an outline shape cut, but that's a circle and that's not what we want to have. So that's that done. Now, as I've been doing this, I've realized there's one step I've forgotten. So please let me step back a little bit, and then I'm going to go back and we're going to do the outline shape that we should be. We did this pocket. There is one thing missing from this. I have the pocket of the actual, for the circuit board to go into, but what I don't have is a way for the cable to come in from the top of the head, from the back of it basically. The way we're going to do that is we're going to put just a little slot above here. We do that by picking the line tool. We draw a line like this and we hit escape, click, click, hit escape. We are going to make this width 2 millimeters. It should be 0 millimeters high. There's nothing more to be done in terms of that. We will position it shortly, but before we do that, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to set it down to full depth. Now that turned yellow because it has tabs in use. I'm going to switch off the tabs. There's no point in having a tab on such a very, very small hole in the piece of wood at full depth. So now we're going to go all the way through, but it needs to be aligned. So we're going to come back to shape. We're going to put it onto X of 0. And I'm going to put it on a Y of 12. And the reason for that is because I'm going to have a square block of wood behind it that's almost 20 millimeters diameter, so 10 millimeters up from here. This little groove is going to be the width of the bit, which is 1/8 of an inch, which is 3.125 millimeters. And so half of that is less than 2 millimeters. So 12 millimeters is a good place. It's going to be close to the block, but not right up on it. So we do need to do that as well, and now you can see that that little hole is there. So apologies for having forgotten that the first time round, but this is definitely now complete. And we're going to go back to the outline. We don't want a circle. What I've given you is in fact a totally different shape, which is a square with corners cut off. And to draw that, we're going to create a new workspace here. We're going to check that the cut settings are as per what we set there, 300 millimeters per minute, which is great. Now the easiest way I know in Easel to draw this, it may be an easier way, but this way works really well, is I'm going to draw a rectangle and I'm going to make that dimension 95 and that's a position. I keep doing that. Just change the size to 95 wide and 65 tall. Now that's not a square, but what I'm going to do is create another one over here, and this one I'm going to make 65 wide and 95 tall. When I put these together, I can center align them vertically and horizontally, and what I have is a square with corners cut out. Now that's not the way I want the corners cut out. I want straight lines. To get that, I'm going to zoom in a bit. First thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to right click and I'm going to turn it into one single shape using this command combine. So now there's no two rectangles one on top of each other. There is just this shape, which is, as I say, a square with corners cut out. Now I'm going to come over to the shape here, and there's this little option to edit points. If I do that, it shows all of these points here. This is useful because if I wanted to, I could drag them around and I could change the shape in various ways as I wish. But the way that I wish is I want that shape selected. I'm going to hover over it. I don't think I need to hover it. Once it's selected, all I do is hit delete. And it disappears and I get a nice chamfered corner there, beveled corner. Select that one, delete. Select this one, delete. And select this one, delete. and there's the shape that I want, a square with corners cut off, and these corners work out at 15 millimeters each way. So now I just need to cut it, and much as I did here, there are a couple of steps I need to do. I need to go to the cut and set my depth to 19. I need to set my choice here to cut outside. Where is this? I don't want to cut a pocket. We need to actually stop editing first. That's the problem. Cut outside the path so that the inside diameter here is all 9. I have tabs shown 1, 2, 3, and 4. They happen to be nicely positioned. If they weren't, I get this angle, or get the cursor to change like this, and I can drag them to where I want to be. Don't position them right on a corner. Probably not a good idea to put them on a short edge. Put them in the long one, and we've got 4 good long edges to put them in to hold the piece steady. So we can change, as I said, we can change that number. We can increase the number of tabs or reduce the number of tabs. We can change the height of them. 2 millimeters should be fine. This is what we have. So that's ready to go. That's what we want to cut. It's going to cut the outline here, leave some tabs behind. The only thing is, at the moment, we've cut our pocket over here. This is over in a different part of the material, so we need to select here, go to my shape, and position it once again with x equal to 0 and y equal to 0. And there we have it. Now we've got the pocket, which we need to cut. And we've got a choice of 2 different outlines. The one that I've given you in the design and in the drawings is this one. If you preferred, you certainly could do it circular, and if you preferred a different shape, you could do that again. Either you just create the one you want, or you can create a third, a fourth, and a fifth option. So you could have some sort of triangle, some sort of oval, a hexagon, pentagon, octagon, whatever you like. You could even have something which you draw up in CAD, perhaps in SketchUp, which is a circle with sort of some round petals and looks like a sunflower, a bit of a flower. I mean, it's light, so that might be a good theme that you wish to follow. It's entirely up to you. The key is you can try to draw it here, or what you can do is you can import it from other software such as Illustrator, SketchUp, or any one of those. There are a few other options down here that may also help you. As I say, I've just shown you the method I know, but right now I'm just trying to show you one method that I know works, just to show you the power of the CNC. You're welcome to come and learn more as you wish, depending on what job you wish to be doing. But for now, next step, we're going to put the material onto the machine. We're going to set up your machine because we're going to run it from your version of the software, and we're going to actually carve using these commands. I can't demonstrate it on the video right now because I'm not connected to the machine. I will do that in person, and perhaps what we'll do is run the recording software so that we've got a copy of what happened as we went along. So right now, please go draw this, get ready, and we'll be carving this as soon as it's done. Thank you very much.